Playing the piano is a very intimate thing. I mean, you have a direct relationship with the music, A. B, you can't fake it because whatever you have inside you, inside your your thought process, your emotional process, your soul, you you really apply yourself and try to bring it out in the music. And that's something that you can't really fake because I mean if somebody is, you know, very introverted and very shy, it is unlikely, no matter how talented he or she may be, that he or she could take a piece that is, you know, very extroverted and very, you know, bombastic and so on, and make it really convincing because that really is not in his character. I mean, sure, you can learn and play things that maybe you are not ideally, shall we say, suited to your character, and you can play it well, but there will always be a reflection of who you are. So if somebody's very, very romantic and so on, and playing a very sort of angry sort of piece, yeah, they can probably get into it up to a point, but not really that convincing. You know, play repertoire of, you know, like really huge, very, very strong pieces, because generally as people, they are like that too. And they probably are not quite as necessarily suited to, you know, very small miniatures that some composers write, or you know, some of the very intimate works of, you know, Schubert or Mozart. Yeah, that's not their thing, which is fine. I mean, it's not that, you know, oh, you're not a great maestro if you haven't, you know, if you can't, do you play everything? I mean, that's not necessarily I think, a valid yardstick to measure people with. I mean, the famous pianist Arthur Schnabel, he was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked him, Maestro, well, how do you feel about being considered the preeminent Beethoven specialist of your time? And Schnabel answered, well, it just means I play everything else even worse. And that really stuck with me, and I thought, well, yeah, that it was maybe tongue in cheek, but I mean, you know, the sort of, even if it was tongue in cheek, the shall we say, the modesty towards Beethoven, which is at that point it isn't just being, you know, pretend modest. It is true, and it says, well, I guess it means I play everything else worse, and so that I remember, even though I read about it when I was a little kid. I think that the miracle of composition is that somehow the composer had this music clearly in his head. And when he writes it, it really has this sense of timelessness. And it is up to us as the interpreters to try to draw what is from this music and find the subtleties and the nuances and what is really great in it. It is very daunting because we play a piece, we try to learn how to physically play it, and so that it is on time and what we've been taught. And then you have musicologists who say, and they say, well, at this time when he wrote this waltz, he was in love with that countess who, couldn't care less about him or didn't like him. And so therefore, he wrote that to try to, get on her good side or to try to express, his sadness over it, things like that. I mean, very often, when I see those things, I kind of wonder, like, did he have a crush on some countess or princess or some girl? And perhaps she had no clue that he was even remotely interested. Because, those things happen in life. One of the most difficult things as a musician, because also at the time that we are studying or playing a piece for the first few times and so on, we're sort of trying to get it into our fingers, as we would say as pianists, or trying to, just get a sense of it, but realizing that over time that, as I said, it sort of matures, that we understand more of it. The fact that back then I had no clue, I thought I was really studying it and getting to, shall we say, know the piece, and realizing that maybe 30, 40 years later, it's like, oh my God, this is so changed, and I see this with a completely different light and a completely different perspective. I'm also very conscious that that's the part that I think I've understood now, but it's very probable that where I am today is the same spot I was 30 years ago with this piece, and perhaps in the future I will then find other layers of it. And in that, really the miracle of these composers is they write these things and they continue to sort of show further depths of musical interest, of beauty, of subtleties, of ways of looking at it. I was asked once, what did I think, of music, when I'm doing perhaps other things? And I said, well, the one thing about being a musician that is really particular is that if you're doing other more practical things in life, you're dealing with human nature. And, human nature can have, shall we say, its rough sides. And I particularly am very, very grateful about being able to be a musician, because when you play a piece of Beethoven, a great piece of music, and you come back to it, shall we say, after a period, that piece is never going to change and not give you that beauty. If anything, it shows you more levels of greatness and beauty and emotional satisfaction. And in that, the beauty, if anything, has bloomed even more, has gotten more mature, and it kind of is a sort of a challenging or unpleasant situations. But with music, you come back to the music, and the thrill and the warmth of that will not, when he comes back, it's like, oh my God, what happened? It turned on a minute, it became something that was unintelligible. No, this music, if anything, with time becomes more and more a part of you, and as part of your life experiences in your journey, lifelong journey as a musician, that your life experiences end up having an effect on the music that you're playing, that the music is always there, ready for you as you have developed, grown, hopefully wiser or not, but it shows you more and more, but it remains always with this beauty. Well, I think now we're in a state of suspended animation in which, it's very difficult to kind of find ways of performing and playing music. I mean, I remember when CDs came out, that there was this sense of dread that, oh my God, well, there goes performances, because the technical quality was so good, and the fact that with professional editing, you could fix mistakes and so on. But it turned out that not necessarily. I mean, that was not the case. And even though, yes, with CDs you had, in a certain sense, perfection in a recording, and then the marketing people decided we'll go to live recording, in which to sort of copy the live performance. And then, I know, from personal experience, that even CDs I made that were live recordings were not quite so live. I mean, they weren't dead, but they weren't just one take. The implication is it's just one take from a concert, and wow, there you were. And I mean, there's always a touch-up session, or certain things went wrong, or they always take at least from the dress rehearsal, so that they have things in case things happen. I mean, because if you think about it, I've never heard a CD that was marketed as live performance with a single mistake. Ever. So, I mean, that should, I mean, yes, granted, the technical professional level is always, very, very high, but I mean, just from a sort of common sense generality, it is not possible that every single live recording never had the slightest slip, smudge, or wrong note. I mean, so even though that was something that people thought well, that's the end of concert life, there is, and I don't say it because, as a performing musician, that's, shall we say, to our profession's benefit, but there really is no substitute to a live performance. And hearing the great music played live at that moment, there is always going to be that sense of sort of intangible electricity that cannot be captured, no matter how technically good the recording equipment is, the video equipment, the cameras, and so on and so forth. I think it is truly something that so far cannot really be replicated. And people who go to concerts do feel that. So, from that point of view, I think, there always will be live concerts, and there will always be public that wants to go hear it, because there is that something that is so different of a live performance. In the same way, you can say that the public may not understand technically, or perhaps, really deeply musicologically, when a performance is really extraordinary, but somehow they feel it instinctively that there is something magic happening. And so from that point of view, I'm, very confident that, concert life will continue, and there will be this, demand for it. I mean, certainly it fit with the current pandemic, the fact that, the idea that it is dangerous to be close together for musicians, for orchestras. How do they play sitting, at great distance? How does a chorus sing? They can't be distanced, but at the same time, with the fear that, as has happened in many choruses, that many people got sick and even died from a rehearsal, or opera. One sees the opera live, the streaming that the Metropolitan Opera does, that the Vienna State Opera does, and their wonderful performances. When I see them, I have this great sense of sadness and melancholy, thinking, well, what if an effective vaccine is not found? Are these the last performances that we can see of really unbelievably extraordinary art form of opera, of symphonies? It fills me really with great sadness. I mean, they're wonderful performances, but there's always that worry. Well, even though one thinks that it's very likely that some form of vaccine will be found to overcome this. Nothing in life is really sure. So it does fill me with some, that little bit of doubt. But aside from that, I think that there will always be, in spite of a very difficult situation worldwide, there will always be a concert life. When we speak about music, and it seems like a slogan, it seems like a cliche to say that oh, music is universal and transcends. But I really do think that the greatness of music, there are musical works that have a certain emotional content that over a period of centuries, people all across the world know what the composer is trying to describe or say to us. There are, great war horses like Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto, and everybody says, oh, that's, the favorite piece, and it's so thrilling and so beautiful and such nice tunes and so on. And it sounds a bit of a cliche, but on the other hand, it isn't a cliche because, for instance, in the second movement, there's this wonderful clarinet solo, which is very plaintive and very much alone. And it kind of tells this very sorrowful situation with moments of, memories of times when it was all great, and at the same time with a lot of wistfulness and a sense of loss and so on. And this music for me, for example, is kind of the kind of situation where if I had to describe it, I would say Rachmaninoff is telling a story about a situation, a very romantic situation of a love lost, a love interrupted, whatever, that each person listening to it can identify with, and they can sense what he is saying. And this experience that the person can identify with in this music, miraculous clarinet solo, is something that maybe is so personal that have never or would never speak about to another person, because it is something so intimate and so personal. But the music makes them relive that. And this is across all nationalities, all religions, all boundaries, all races. This music touches the heart because it reminds all of us of a very special situation, perhaps when we were younger, perhaps recently. It reminds someone of a very pure moment of unbelievable beauty that we have this fond memory of or this painful memory of. It is something that really transcends, because without explaining what it is, this music communicates something that we all kind of say, yeah, I know, but mine is different than yours, or the next person, or the person who's sitting over there, or another person in another country listening to a recording of it, or another person in a concert hall. But we all have our own personal experiences in life from a personal point of view, and this music speaks to that situation that we all recognize, even though it is completely different for everybody else. And so, in that sense, the fact of great masterpieces, they have this effect that I find nothing short of miraculous. And whether you're religious or not, I mean, I personally am not particularly religious, but it, for me, is like this clear indication there is a higher being, because how does one person write something that everybody knows what he's referring to? And this is without words. And so that for me is one of the most interesting things about what is the scope of music and how does it relate to people, and the fact that it can be international or not international. It really is not a cliche, because for me, in my experience, it is a reality.